Hello everyone, the holiday season is upon us and I'm here to give you some insight on things you should consider if you are planning on gifting a plant to a pet owner during this holiday season. We all know the feeling of not wanting to arrive at a holiday gathering empty-handed, and it is so convenient to stop by a local store and pick up a holiday plant like a poinsettia. But if you are planning on gifting that plant to someone with pets at home, then I strongly urge you to reconsider. When I was in 8th grade, one of my friends spent Easter Sunday mourning the loss of her cat. Her family had hosted an Easter brunch and someone had brought an Easter lily as a gift for the family. Her parents knew that Easter lilies were bad for cats, but they didn't want to be rude, so they just put the Easter lily off to the side. And unfortunately, a few hours later, when their cat started throwing up, that's when they realized that the cat had nibbled on a petal and a leaf from the Easter lily. And by the time they took their cat to the emergency vet clinic, there was nothing else that they could do for the cat. I think about this story during every holiday season, and no one should have to spend a holiday mourning the loss of their pet. So I'm making this video to help you make some more educated choices on what plants you should never give to a pet owner. First, I'm going to go over 5 popular holiday gift plants that I don't think you should be giving to a pet owner ever. And after that, I'll go over 5 plants that I think make better alternatives for pet owners. If you want more details on a particular plant or how it affects cats or dogs, then please check out the ASPCA website, and I'll put a link to that below in the description. As a disclaimer to this video, even non-toxic plants should not be consumed by your pets. When a plant is considered to be non-toxic, that just means that it's considered to be non-deadly, but consuming this plant can still cause unwanted side effects like digestive distress or mouth injuries, and plants can be a choking hazard too. So please don't let your pets eat your plants. Alright, so now let's get started on the forbidden plants. The first item on the list is mixed floral arrangements. You know, the ones that come in nice vases, the ones that you can order from 1-800-Flowers, or that you can get at the grocery store. Please avoid giving these plants to a pet owner. And the reason for that is that unless you're willing to take the time to research every single plant that's included in this floral arrangement, you never know what might be toxic to a dog or a cat in the recipient's home. If you're going to disregard my advice and go ahead and get a floral arrangement for someone with pets in their home, then at least follow a few rules and make sure to do the research on what's included in that floral arrangement. So first rule for floral arrangements is no lilies. No lilies whatsoever. It doesn't matter if it's a cat or a dog living in the home, just please avoid lilies, and lilies are going to have their own section in this video. Another big one to avoid in floral arrangements is eucalyptus, and eucalyptus is beautiful and it smells so good, but unfortunately it is so toxic to dogs and cats. And ingesting the leaves can cause salivation, vomiting, diarrhea, depression, and I can't even imagine knowing that your animal is depressed because of a plant that came into your home. Another type of flower that is normally found in floral arrangements is roses, and generally your average rose is fine to have in a floral arrangement. These are considered to be non-toxic to dogs and cats. So if you're giving a pet owner a floral arrangement that just consists of roses, then I'm completely fine with that. But just to clarify, I am referring to the average rose. I am not referring to plants with the words rose in them, like desert rose or Easter rose. Those are entirely different plants that are toxic to both cats and dogs. Another one that's frequently found in floral arrangements is baby's breath. And according to the ASPCA website, baby's breath is non-toxic to cats and dogs in the sense that it is not lethal. But after mentioning that it is non-toxic, the ASPCA website also mentions that it can cause GI symptoms such as diarrhea and vomiting. So it might be a good idea to avoid baby's breath, especially since it is so small and it can easily be nibbled on by a cat or a dog. And now let's move on to the second item on my list of forbidden plants to give to pet owners this holiday season, and that would be the lily. For this holiday season, I'm specifically talking about peace lilies and Christmas lilies, and I know those are 2 separate plants, but lilies tend to be pretty bad for cats and dogs, so I'm just grouping them together into the big lily category. If you look on the ASPCA website's general lily page, they're considered to be non-toxic for dogs. But they're considered to be especially toxic to cats, and they can cause kidney failure in cats very quickly after ingestion. So definitely don't give lilies to someone with cats, but I also don't think you should be giving lilies to someone with dogs either. If you start looking into plants with the words lily in them on the ASPCA website, like peace lily or calla lily, what you'll find is that these other lilies can also be toxic to cats and dogs. So as a general rule, please avoid giving lilies to pet owners. The third item on my list is a poinsettia, and I don't know why I personally hate this plant so much, and I'm not a hateful person, but I really dislike this plant. I don't know if it's because every year, right after Thanksgiving, it seems like armies of poinsettia plants arrange themselves everywhere in the city and in every store, and the grocery store and the hardware stores and the plant stores. But every year I get so tired of looking at poinsettias, and I'm sure your pets do too. Some people say that the toxicity of poinsettias is overrated and they're not actually that bad for cats and dogs. And if that's your opinion, that's fine, but I would never take that chance with my dog. If a dog or a cat happens to lick the sap from a poinsettia plant, that can be very irritating to their mouth and their esophagus, and eating the leaves can cause nausea and vomiting. And now the fourth plant on this list is the holly plant. Hollies are a beautiful plant, and they're a signature holiday plant, and they look great on Christmas cards, and they look great outside in nature, but please don't bring them into a pet owner's home. Hollies can cause diarrhea, vomiting, and depression in both cats and dogs, and you wouldn't want anything to happen to your friend or your family member's pets because you brought them a holly plant, so just don't bring them a holly plant. And now, the fifth item on my list is mistletoe. And once again, mistletoe is such a signature holiday and Christmas plant, but please keep mistletoe out of pet owners' homes. If a dog or a cat eats mistletoe, this can cause some digestive distress such as diarrhea and vomiting. It can cause difficulty breathing and low blood pressure. Mistletoe is also thought to produce hallucinations in dogs and cats, so please don't do this to anyone's pet and avoid bringing mistletoe into someone else's home if they have pets at home. If you are in a situation where your pet might have consumed any part of a toxic plant, even in small amounts, then I strongly recommend that you contact either your pet's veterinarian or the Animal Poison Control Center immediately, because time is very important on these matters. If you want to contact the Animal Poison Control Center, I'll put a link to that below in the description, and I hope you never have to use it. The severity of plant toxicity can depend on so many things like your plant size, what kind of plant was eaten, how much of the plant was eaten, what part of the plant was eaten. But in all of these cases, time is so valuable, and the sooner you act, the more likely it is that a veterinarian can save your pet. As a side note to this video, I know that I have a lot of toxic plants in my home, even though I have a dog in my home. And I think that it's fine to have toxic plants in your home if you as a pet owner decided that you are comfortable having those plants in your home. I brought these plants into my home because I know my dog well enough to know that he is not interested in my plants, and more importantly, I am confident in my ability to keep these plants out of my dog's reach. So I'm not making this video to tell you as a pet parent that you should not have toxic plants in your home, but rather I'm saying don't buy these plants for someone else who has pets in their home, because you don't know their comfort level with their pet and being able to keep their pets out of their plants. So don't make the toxic plants decision for someone else. So now that we're done with the sad toxic plants part of this video, let's move on to the happier plants that are invited to party with pets during this holiday season. The first plant on my list that I recommend as being safe for dogs and cats is the holiday cactus. This is actually a Thanksgiving cactus, but around this time of year you can also find a Christmas cactus, and they look nearly identical. And I really like the Christmas cactus because it's so fun to look at. It's easy to maintain, and the leaves are a little bit softer than a traditional cactus, so it's not as much of a hazard if you accidentally bump into it. Something that's really nice about holiday cactuses is that they can live year-round, and unlike most plants that bloom in the spring and summer, the Thanksgiving cactus and the Christmas cactus actually blooms in the winter and in the fall. And you can get holiday cactuses with orange blooms, pink blooms, or even white blooms. Something to note about the Thanksgiving cactus though is that, like most plants, I would try to keep it out of reach of my pets even though it might be considered safe for pets. And the reason for that is because it can look so fun to play with. Like if I was a cat, I would just keep doing this and I would be so entertained. And sorry plant. So for the sake of the plant and for the sake of your animals, I would keep this plant out of reach of your pets. The second plant on my list is the Phalaenopsis orchid. And orchids are beautiful and they come with all sorts of beautiful flowers in all different colors. And as you can see, this doesn't look like your traditional orchid because the orchids aren't here. But unfortunately, once they lose those blooms, then you kind of just have a plant with really big leaves. Apart from the obvious tip of picking a plant with nice flowers so that it can look very presentable when you hand it off to the recipient. Another tip that I have is to inspect the plant very closely and look for something called mealybugs. Be on the lookout for if the plant has any signs of a sticky residue or if there are any white fluffy things on the plant. Because unfortunately, a big problem with Phalaenopsis orchids, especially if you buy them at a place that doesn't specialize in plants, sometimes they come with mealybugs and they can be really hard to get rid of. I think Phalaenopsis orchids make great gifts for both dog owners and cat owners, but I wouldn't recommend giving a Phalaenopsis orchid to someone who already has orchids at home. The third plant on my list is the Hoya, and Hoyas come in all sorts of varieties. This is my Hoya pechiclata plant. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but I love this plant so much because of its chunky leaves, and I feel like it has so much personality. Hoyas are relatively easy to care for. They're like a succulent in the sense that they store a lot of water in their leaves, and that's why they're chunky. But they're not like a succulent in the sense that they can thrive in places that don't have a lot of great lighting. There are so many varieties of Hoyas out there, and depending on the recipient of the Hoya, you can either choose a beginner easy plant that will grow really quickly, or you can choose a more exotic plant. The pechiclata one is somewhere in between, and actually this is the most expensive plant I've ever bought. But I really like it. I mean, look how chunky it is. When it comes to Hoyas, I would recommend try to go for one of the more affordable and fast-growing varieties rather than one of the more rare and exotic varieties, because unless you are giving this plant to someone who knows a lot about plants, you don't want to feel resentful if something happens to that plant or if the plant doesn't make it. So that's why I would stay away from the nicer varieties of Hoyas unless you know the person has plant experience. And now we're on to the fourth plant on the list, which is the Norfolk pine. The Norfolk pine is also known as the Australian pine, and I like how soft the branches feel. And this is a great tree because it can live year-round, and if you take good care of it, it can also grow to be pretty big if that's what you want. The Norfolk pine is considered to be non-toxic for both cats and dogs, and it makes a great alternative if you want to have a live Christmas tree, but maybe you don't have the space for it. There's a few things that you should watch out for if you are getting a Norfolk pine for a pet parent. Around the holiday season, a lot of the Norfolk pines that you find in stores are sometimes painted either with glitter or like a frosty look to them. So I would avoid any painted Norfolk pines because the paint itself might not be very safe for cats or dogs if they happen to nibble on the branches. Something else to consider about Norfolk pines is that sometimes you will find them sitting in water, and this is not a good idea for a pet parent because even though the tree itself might be non-toxic, the tree might have had fertilizers and those go into the water, and then stagnant water also causes bacteria and mold growth, and if you have a dog or a cat that's going to possibly drink that water, that's not going to end well. So if you are going to gift a Norfolk pine, make sure that it is not sitting in water, make sure that it is in soil, and make sure that the soil is properly draining prior to giving this Norfolk pine to someone with pets at home. And now we're on to the fifth and final plant that I recommend as being safe for pet owners, and that is the succulent. Succulents come in all different shapes, sizes, and colors, and they make great gifts because they are so easy to care for, and they are considered to be safe for both dogs and cats. I've personally never met a succulent that was toxic to either cats or dogs, but if you have a particular succulent that you're not sure about, I recommend checking out the ASPCA website or doing a Google search to find that particular succulent species. I hope this video provided you with some insight on things you should consider and plants that you should not give to a pet owner. And if you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and if you didn't, feel free to give it a thumbs down. And if you are interested in more videos like this, please hit the subscribe button below.